Welcome back to the Lib Dem Podcast. My name is John Potter. I am the host of the Lib Dem Podcast, and I'm also the leader of the Preston Lib Dems. And we're back with an episode that's going to cover lots of different topics. We're going to be a little bit later in the show. We're going to be talking about what kind of campaigning you can do, our reaction to the Tory leadership contenders, and our reaction to what Rachel Reeves is doing in her first few weeks as Chancellor. But we can't really go into this episode without starting at Southport and some of the horrific events that has happened. So joining us throughout the episode, and one of our new regular panelists is Shaffaq Mohammed, the leader of the Sheffield Lib Dems. Welcome to the podcast, Shaffaq.
Good morning.
And join us on a limited time for only dealing with the Southport issue, because Richard, as anyone knows, is now the Lord Mayor of Liverpool, and so he's not being political during this time, which is probably a godsend to all our listeners that he is, his appearances have been limited, but he obviously has lots of experience, and as a mayor in Merseyside, wanted to come on and share his experiences about what's happened in Southport. So we will do that first, and then Richard will leave us. So I suppose, Richard, we should start off by, obviously, everyone will, listeners will know what's happened in Southport. There was horrific murder of 3 young girls at a Taylor Swift dancing class. At the time of recording, we know a 17-year-old who's about to turn 18 has just been named by the authorities in order to stop some of the misinformation that has happened. But Richard, I suppose going to you, it's you've obviously, as a mayor in Merseyside, how has this happened for you, and what has been the reaction been like across the whole last few days?
Well, as the Lord Mayor of Liverpool, I was asked to go and provide support for the Mayor of Sefton, because there's sometimes that mayors can only help other mayors because she's non-political as well, so it's easier for me to give support. And I went to the very moving vigil, which she addressed, and we both laid flowers at. And there were probably over an hour, 2,500 to 3,000 Southport residents, sandbankers they call themselves, because there's never any sea in Southport. And there were flowers, there was respect, there was silence. A few people did try and start heckling. Those weren't shut up by the police or the mayor, they were shut up by the crowd. That wasn't what that was about. And there was huge respect and sadness, which had built up during the day with very little interruption, except for about a dozen people who'd come in from the area. They were already drinking heavily, and they were the ones that the crowd shushed. After I'd left, the mood changed, not near the vigil site, but about half a mile away, when there were severe civil disturbances. But crucially, from my understanding, and we do get a regular police briefing on this, there were next to no Southport people involved in this. These were people who'd come in, perhaps they were criminals, perhaps they just liked to fight, perhaps they were racist, perhaps they were all three, determined to use the misinformation that was around to cause trouble. Now, the misinformation was, for example, the fact that the family were Rwandan, and that is true. The police released it to try and calm things down, meant they were Muslims, so which is why they could have a go at the mosque. But anyone who knows Rwanda will know that 96% of the population of Rwanda are actually Christians. So why attack a mosque? It doesn't matter. They're brown, therefore they're Muslims, therefore they're troublemakers. So there were really nasty scenes. 4 people arrested, 48 police officers hurt, and 3 police dogs, and appalling scenes. But the next day, what happened in that part of Southport, the community got together again. It was the community out helping the council. The council wasn't doing nothing, but helping the council clear up, tidy up. Walls, some bricklayers just turned up and relaid the walls that had been knocked down. Repairs were made to the mosque. And that was the sign of the community, the real community of Southport coming together. And that's very reminiscent of what I faced in 1981 as a relatively young councillor. I was a councillor in Liverpool 8 at the time of the so-called Toxteth riots. There was very little local involvement in that. They were the same sorts of people coming in. But here it was a lot quicker, because back in 1981, there wasn't social media who could spread misinformation so quickly. And there again, there was this immediate response of the local residents. We're not going to have our community damaged like this. They were out on the streets trying to calm things down, but then they very quickly came in, working alongside Liverpool Council to try and put the problems right. But it's long term in two ways. It's long term in that part of the fabric has been destroyed, although it's been replaced. But it's long term in terms of perception of those areas. So if you say to a lot of people now, Toxteth, what do they remember? Oh, that's where the riots were. And it's dangerous still, isn't it? Well, it wasn't particularly dangerous then, and it's no more dangerous than anywhere else now. So we all need to come together, and that's why I went to support the mayor. I hope Liberal Democrat councillors are helping the Lib Dem councillors in Southport, who are also going to have to adjust, although they don't represent that particular area. So we need to come together as a Lib Dem family, as a local government family, and particularly as a Southport family, to look at those long-term issues.
And Shaffaq, what's your response to it? I mean, as you know, because there's been further issues now in London and in Hartlepool since. What's your initial response to like kind of how this is being used or whipped up? And you know, because there's always someone who's trying to benefit from these sorts of horrible tragedies, and we're now seeing that playing out on some of our streets.
Yeah, look, I mean, initially as a family, we were just horrified and shocked by what we saw and heard, and just, you know, we all got young children. I mean, mine are now grown up, but you know, they were once 6 and 7 year olds. They went to clubs. I've got a youth club just behind the house I live in, you know, in the park here. Our children, there's a children's playground. You know, parents, you know, send their children to summer camps and they expect them to come back. And what you don't expect is someone to go in there and to murder them. So there was that shock and horror, and then just to see the sheer violence. You know, these weren't bricks; they were rocks. Big stones were being thrown at very short distances towards police officers who, at the start, Richard, they didn't have any riot gear. You know, and so, you know, and to their credit, they stood the ground. They stood the ground to protect the mosque, but also shops. You know, there was a Port Sri Lankan guy who's had his shop looted. And you're right that what we saw initially after the vigil was a group of people who basically had decided online. They already decided who was the killer. They already decided that none of the facts were going to get in the way. And this was their chance to vent their anger both at a minority community and the police. And they were just going to do it regardless of what anybody said to them. And going forward, you know, we've got good relationships with the police here in South Yorkshire. And straight away, as that incident started, I was on the phone with local people linked to the mosques, speaking to one or two people to say, look, I think we need to speak. And to his credit, the commander for Sheffield as well, there's a gentleman called Paul Ferguson. He had already been in touch with him as well. And yesterday they issued a joint statement about it, reassuring the community. So the police are, you know, doing their reassurances here, and they're going to stamp out it. But it's not the first time that misinformation is being used. If you ever come to Sheffield, both of you, I'll take you to a place called Sheffield Lane Top. And I remember about 10, 12 years ago that there was a massive EDL demo against a mosque being built. But everyone was scratching their heads going, it's an old pub. It's a KFC being planned. But hey, none of those facts got in the way of the EDL turning up, marching through. And I will take both of you guys to that KFC, because that's what it was. You know,
that's very generous of you, Shaffaq. But if
but you know,
nice
it just sums up that.
Yeah.
No matter what you tell people, the fact that maybe this pub was going up for auction and a couple of people from a minority community were interested in buying it as a business venture, that was enough for people. So I think social media has played a big part here of misinformation. But I'm incredibly proud of Southport. It's a place we went to once, John, for a Lib Dem conference, if you remember. Yeah. And maybe, you know, we ought to go back to say thank you. It's just, I wasn't too far from it, actually. I was at Ormskirk a couple of weeks ago. It's only another junction up the road there. And I felt incredibly proud of what that community did. I don't have much contact with Southport other than our former MP and the Lib Dem conference. But, you know, if I get a chance to ever be in that part of the world, John, I'll just go up. Yeah. Just to say thank you. Just that actually what you did, it was, you know, it wasn't pre-arranged or publicity seeking anything. It was just that community came out and said, not in our name. And this is not what Southport's about. And they just turned up and they swept the streets, and the council came as well, but actually individuals, and they put that brick wall back up around the mosque, and they went to that shopkeeper, I understand, to help and secure that shop. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, you know, you're closer to it than I am, but they are trying to support that shopkeeper because he had all his cigarettes and alcohol looted. And I really hope the police get to the bottom of these people that organised it and those that took part in it, and they get the book thrown at them, just as the guys that were rioting in Bradford 20 odd years ago got 6 or 7 years. And it was you know, but a huge shock. Look, ultimately, these challenges come, but actually communities, that's what we're about, aren't we, Richard? You know, as Liberal Democrats, communities at the heart of it. And that's where everyone comes together. And I saw those scenes at the vigil. Was it outside the town hall, Richard? You know the geography better.
The vigil was outside the town hall.
Yeah, and it was absolutely jam-packed, wasn't it?
Yeah, and people were coming and going. So I don't know how many people came during the day. The estimate was it could be up to 5,000, but there's only room for about 2,000 at any one time. And that was very short notice. That was spontaneous. That's the real people of Southport.
Absolutely.
And when I was thinking about this episode, I was kind of in my mind, I was trying to think, how do we deal with this subject? Because in a sense, I actually don't think any of the rioting, anything had anything to do with the stabbing whatsoever. It was just an excuse. If the stabbing hadn't occurred, they would have found something else to do. And in one way, we're forgetting about what the actual real tragedy is of those 3 little girls that killed. BB, Alice, and Elsie and their families have been utterly destroyed. And the fact that some people they weren't mourners, they didn't care about those kids. They turned up to a vigil with a crate of beer and an attitude just to be. They're just arseholes. I'm sorry, they wanted to pick a fight, and they had nothing to do. And they are making those people hurt twice. And I have no time for them whatsoever.
And don't forget, the mother of one of the children killed said, "Do not do this in my daughter's name. Do not riot. Do not cause trouble." The other thing we've got to consider is not only the generality of the BME population on Merseyside, Sheffield, and where else, but also the Rwandan community. Now, coincidentally, I had a meeting yesterday with the leader of the local Rwandan community, and they are now very fearful. Their kids aren't going out. Most people don't know who a Rwandan is. They don't look different than any other African, as it were. And there's only about 100 of them in the Liverpool City region. But they're going to be under huge pressure as well. So we have to give help to the community in Southport. We have to be aware of the problems. And then tomorrow, we understand that the English Defence League or similar are planning a demonstration in Liverpool. Now, the last time it happened, it didn't go very well for them because as they came out of Lime Street Station, there were a load of loudspeakers playing the Benny Hill theme tune, and they turned around and went back in again. So just treat these people as objects of contempt and fun. They don't represent Liverpool, where we have a very good, not perfect, but a very good record for racial incidents. Let's all treat them with the contempt they deserve and unite against them in a peaceful and loving way, because that's what our communities are and that's what they want.
Yeah, lovely. Well, on that, we're going to take a little break where we say goodbye to Richard, and me and Shaff will talk through the rest of the agenda. But I think one of the key takeaways about this is obviously about social media and things like that. And we've seen it on my profile, the amount of kind of far-right bots and people and agitators on there. And again, if at any point you're a campaign, you think, just block, just take a break, just, don't let these kind of algorithms and influence. I mean, we've seen all sorts of things from Tommy Robinson and all that stuff being further retweeted by Elon Musk of all things. So, Twitter at the moment is more horrendous every day. And so if you need to take a break and you need to cleanse your brain and your soul, then maybe actually coming off some of the social medias for a few hours when this stuff is happening might be the best thing for you. But we'll take a break. Thank you very much, Richard. And me and Shaff will continue after this short spell. Right, we're back with the second half of this episode. And to start off with, because we know a lot of us have had maybe little mini breaks or hopefully a little break after the general election, because you know what? I was pretty knackered at the end of it all, as I'm sure Shaff was as well. But we want this to get into August because for many people, myself included, we have big county elections next year. And also, you do have to get back on that horse and start campaigning again, because I never like leaving it too long without campaigning, Shaff, because I start feeling like I'm missing out. So have you got things planned for August for you and your team in Sheffield?
Yeah, we have. We're on it already. I mean, the general election came. We had a thank you focus. So in the non-target areas of outside of Hallam, they were put on hold. And as we speak now, I was out yesterday with the team. I'll be going out later on after this podcast to go and deliver those thank you focuses. We've been a bit cheeky. We put in a letter from some of our parliamentary candidates as well to thank people that voted for us. And yeah, I mean, the issues aren't gone away, by the way, John. Local issues have not gone away just because we've had, in our case, we had a local election in May and then a general election in July. Yeah, so we've not really come off this treadmill. So we let people have a couple of weeks break. And I'm being very clear with not just our councillors, but more importantly with our activists, that we are back out, knocking on doors, listening to people, but also, making sure we do the casework. We've got a couple of summer events to go to as well. There's an event tomorrow that I'll be going to in my ward. So yeah, we're back up and running. And it's really important, isn't it? Because the issues are there, local and national, by the way. So, people are now talking to me about national issues.
Yeah.
I thought they might have had enough of it for the last 6-7 weeks previously, but no, they're still talking about national issues and how things are. We might touch on that later on in the show.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I did a canvas session just yesterday as we were recording, and it was really interesting because what you're also getting, which is quite useful from a data point of view from when you get, is people are quite willing to talk about how they voted in the general. So it can be a useful thing because anyone who canvasses lots will get the people that I always vote for you locally, and then they vote somewhere else. But that's a really useful bit of data you can collect when you're canvassing because. For those, most of our listeners will know, when you're going out on minivan, you have the first question is usually who you're going to vote for in the next local election. Yeah. Also has a usual support and who did you vote for in the general election. So then you can get a more complex view of where those people are. So again, it's a really useful time to be gathering really detailed kind of voter ID kind of data. But also, from our point of view, we know that time has been crunched in terms of things that we normally do over the summer months for like surveys and things like that. We're having to obviously that now time has been compressed a little, and maybe your surveys go into a little bit into the autumn, etc. But I will say, Shaff, I mean I've got elections next year. I'm not sure if Sheffield does. Have you got a year?
No, we've got a year off, but that doesn't mean we're not going to.
You can come across Lancashire and help. And happy Yorkshire Day for yesterday as well, I suppose, from the Red Rose County. Is that I was very worried if the general election was in November, December, how exhausted we would be going into those counties in 2025. So actually, I mean, I'd never thank Rishi Sunak for much, apart from giving us 72 MPs, but actually, we now have time to actually to have a little break, reset our brains and crack on. But you can do numerous things still in these months. I mean, that what's left of summer before we start getting into autumn. Making sure you get your selections right and your approvals right. Now, we've already selected our county candidates. We're actually going to plan to get our selections done for 2026 very quickly as well, because, again, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. It's never about one election. It's about your sequence of elections in order to build up your support. You can still do surveys like we've talked, not going to drop. You can do all sorts of surveys, and also getting your plans together, getting your budgets together. Where are you going to target? What are your, if you've had local elections in May just gone, didn't get the results you wanted, how are you going to improve that? Where are you going to get your vote? Make sure you get hold of your marked registers. And for those, again, most of our listeners and viewers will know what marked registers are, but these are the registers telling us who votes in the elections. It's all perfectly above board. We are allowed to gather this data from councils, but you've got potentially two sets of local elections, two sets of elections. You've got the locals and the general. So you think, okay, the general election is obviously a lot higher. You know, okay, these people generally vote in locals, but don't vote in the general election, or vice versa, and then you can target those people as potential new voters for you to get you over the line. So there's loads of stuff to be done, and like Shaffaq, while the weather's nice and warm, go out and get some leaflets delivered, or go out and also, I suppose it's the perfect time to recruit, because none of us have got enough deliverers generally. And actually, you go onto your thing, you look at your potential new recruits. There's even a special tab for that to be able to find it, and going out and having those slightly longer conversations. This is the perfect time to do it.
Well, I usually say to some of my guys, look, if you're out delivering, just do it as a slow delivery. If there's people in the gardens, the one I find always useful is compliment the garden.
Yeah.
Compliment the garden. Say, God, have you just done all that? My goodness. And often, some of these people really take pride in their gardens. So just standing there, just being able to talk to them, and the fact that, you eventually will come on to politics.
Yeah.
But, you talk about the weather, you talk about the garden, talk about the lack of rain or the amount of rain. We had it both yesterday here in Sheffield. It was absolutely bucketing it down in the morning. Lucky for me, I had a council meeting, and then as soon as it rain stopped, I was out. But no, just having that conversation, because I tell you what, John, and your listeners will know this as well, but the fact that you're out about after an election, and for us, when there isn't an election, the fact that, you're out. Yeah, yes, I'm still out. I'm here. We've not gone away. And the other issue is we're in a different landscape now.
Yeah.
We're in a different landscape. Before May, it was very anti-Tory. And now, I'll be honest with you, the spotlight's totally shifted.
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about the leadership in a bit, and we might just fall into it now. But
yeah, can do.
At the moment, there's a lot of spotlights on what this new government's doing. And there's a little sideshow on the side here of, what the Conservatives may do or may not do. But like I said, this is the time. And yeah, absolutely, you're right. But going back to your marked registers, get your marked registers in. I've told our agent, Andy Sanger, get them ordered. Those people that have got a bit of time between now and Christmas can enter those marked registers in. And it's just data. Like you say, it's got to be, campaigning is data driven, and that's part of it. And, that's how we win, because we work all year round. We don't just rock up at election time. I know I saw this, one of the newly elected Labour MPs said, he never thought he'd win, and he turned up and he campaigned for 4 weeks. Well, that's his luck. We don't have that as a Lib Dems. No. Trust me, most of those, our colleagues that have been elected into Parliament, all 72 of them, have not just rocked up 4 weeks earlier. Yeah. A lot of them have worked for year in, year out.
And it's going to be really interesting. And like I say, I did some canvassing yesterday. I did a good couple of hours yesterday stretch. And it was amazing. And it does link into the two final things we're going to talk about, the Tory leadership and how Labour have been perceived in their first few weeks. And it was incredible. The winter fuel payments might be a really big issue and a real problem for Labour. And we'll go into Labour now. So the two issues that came up, because I don't prompt people on the door, because I think I want to naturally know what they're interested in. The 2-child cap came up several times, as did the winter fuel payments, which has obviously just been announced. And I suppose from your point of view, Shaffaq, what do you think Rachel Reeves is up to here? Is it just as simple as the the economy's in a state, we know we're going to have to do bad things. Let's get all the nasty stuff out straight away. Then hopefully in 4 years, nobody cares about it. Or do you think there's a political angle of the type of voter she's going for? Because, the winter fuel cap, before I actually looked into it, I wasn't sure who got it, who didn't. And then actually, if you look at like 11.5 million pensioners were eligible for it, of which now 10 million of them have gone. And you don't have to be earning an awful lot of money, £215 a week or something like that. And once you get beyond that, you don't get that winter fuel payment. So it's a big decision from Labour to go early, and it really could bite them.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, you're right. I've looked at this. I thought, what's she trying to do? And I thought, is she trying to get, turn up and just blame, I've got a massive black hole I didn't know. Well, I don't think that really sticks, because people previously were saying, look, both the main two parties aren't being honest with decisions around taxation. So I don't think she can wiggle out of that. But, there's going to be a lot of people struggling this winter.
Yeah.
And Labour for the last 14 years have been critical of austerity, of heartless Tories, exactly. Well, the two-child benefit cap is a Tory policy. People didn't vote Labour and voted for change to continue with Tory policies. And a friend of mine yesterday said to me that even the Tories didn't take away the winter fuel payments.
Yeah, because it's Blair.
So what's going off here? What are they trying to do? And I think what they're trying to do is they think that the left to centre vote is already in the bag, and therefore they want to go and chase after that more right of centre Tory vote.
That's a big risk for them, though.
It is a huge risk, because, as you say, there's a lot of people out there that may well have voted Labour who are now thinking, what have I voted for? And I was promised change, but is this the change I voted for?
And it's big impressions, making that big statement and first impressions, because we forget we're the weird people in the room, Shaff, me and you, and the rest of that. Most people don't engage politics at a high level or a scouring BBC News night every night. They are getting tidbits and bits and pieces, and so if this is the first impression they get of a Labour government, is the two-child cap benefit, and then removing winter fuel allowances from older folk that are going to be struggling later on, that it is a huge, like I say, I think it's a massive risk for Labour to have gone this hard this early.
Yeah, and the people locally here are feeling it. You're up in Preston, I'm here in Sheffield, and we've got a lot of people from working class backgrounds who are going to be struggling. And what does it say to anyone that's in the 40s and 50s about private pensions?
Yeah,
because a lot of the people that have been clobbered are the ones who've got a private pension, and not that's paying huge amounts, but it's paying that little bit. That means that they can't claim those benefits, and that's one of the things I've been really banging the drum here in Sheffield, the council, is that, and a couple, I think it was a year and a half ago, I was able to get some extra, about £400,000 extra to citizen advice to say, look, during COVID, everything went into lockdown and it went online. Well, there's certain communities, and ironically, it was the Labour, previous Labour leader at council, Teddy Fox, who's now sits an independent councillor because he's fallen out with the National Party. Me and him got together, and he said, actually, the communities you're talking about and the communities I'm talking about, they may be different ethnically and religiously, but actually they've got the same issues. Some of these people don't have online, so they can't access this sort of stuff, and we need face-to-face benefit advice. And it's something I did, John, for many, many years before I got involved in politics. I have volunteered at my local advice centre, just down the road from where I lived. And what we were able to go, it was a Labour government at the time, Blair's first term, go up to the local MP here and actually show him that for the 20,000 the council gave us in grant aid, this is how many thousands of pounds we've been able to put back into the local economy because we've been able to advise and get the benefits. So whilst citizen advice is still not back to full face-to-face, we're seeing that one of the first acts of the Labour government here, and Rachel Reeves. And the irony is, I don't know if it's correct, but MPs still get their winter, they get their fuel.
Yeah,
I saw a graphic. I don't know how correct it is.
To help with their
yeah. So taxpayers are paying their gas bills and their electric bills or whatever, but they're going to take the knife to the winter fuel allowance for people like my mother.
Yeah, Yeah, and it's
And
really, I mean,
they're going to choose between eating and heating. And the thing they're scared of is come October,
yeah,
it's not going to be just a Chancellor's Autumn Statement / budget. There's also going to be a review of the fuel cap.
yeah, that's right.
And
Well,
if
it's predicted to go up by 10% the fuel
Yeah.
cap. That's the price of that's the maximum price energy companies can
Yep.
charge you is expected to go up 10%. Yet we're removing the winter fuel payment. And I can use Preston because I've got Preston's figures here. So 17,000 pensioners will now not get that winter fuel cap, of which that is 84% of people that did get it will now not get it. And I think and the hypocrisy can be a real powerful element. And as you've mentioned about MPs still getting fuel subsidies yet taking it away, and I wonder if this will be U-turned. We'll come back to it if I'm right in the thing. I don't know if they'll go through with it in the end, because and also we could be absolutely honest on this. What do also older people do? They vote. They vote and they vote on us. And so how Labour will square that circle, I don't know. But that's going to be their start. That's what they decide to go for.
That's their choices, isn't it? No one's forced them to do that.
No.
That wasn't in their manifesto. And the irony is, you can see it online. You were talking about Twitter earlier when Richard was with us. You go on Twitter and you see Keir Starmer asking questions of Starmer. Is it? Starmer's asking questions of Sunak to confirm whether the government, is going to keep it. So, Starmer in opposition was demanding the government of the day kept the winter fuel. The first.
I've got the letter here, which is from the
yes.
Darren Jones, who actually wrote to Jeremy Hunt about the winter fuel allowance when Labour was in opposition, saying it's a bad idea.
And he was on television trying to defend it a couple of days ago, wasn't he?
He was. So it is going to be. But I think this kind of does show the kind of, because we all knew, anyone knew, whoever won the general election, there were going to be some really big and awkward decisions to be made. And that's why I think the general election in 5 years' time, and I know it seems like an age away, but it is going to be a tough fight for Labour. And I know they're cock-a-hoop with a brilliant victory from their point of view in terms of getting that number, but that political, and actually, just to finish this point, one of the people I spoke to yesterday on the doors voted for us locally, absolutely, who are Labour-leaning, and did not vote at all in the general election because they weren't inspired by it. And so I think if that was before all this, and she was one of the people that naturally brought up about the winter fuel allowance, and said, that isn't the Labour Party I believed in. If that is already happening after 4 weeks, then Labour might be in trouble.
Can I just mention another issue here before I move on to the Tory? Social care.
Yeah.
They've just abandoned Dilnot, haven't they? And basically, that cap, wow. So, pensioners are getting hit. Or, double whammy here coming from Labour. That's not had as much publicity, but I tell you what, that's going to be even really bad.
And I put that in the WhatsApp group for our local councillors, and I said, because Dilnot, who came out, so Dilnot, for those that don't know, did a really comprehensive report in how he thinks social care can function going forward. And it's been kind of all political parties have said, yes, this is a great report, but we're not going to implement it just yet. Labour very much went into the election saying we were going to add a cap so you don't have to basically, so people don't have to sell their homes. So there's a cap. If you have to pay for care as you're getting older, it would be capped out. I think it was about £80,000, I think was and Labour have now ditched that pledge. And Lord Dilnot was, is it Lord Dilnot? I think it is, was absolutely scathing about that Labour betrayal. And for those of us who are county councillors, or like yourself, Shaffaq, who are unitary councillors, where social care comes into our remit, social care will break these councils at some point. It is a financial time bomb waiting to happen. And for Labour to kind of push the issue into the long grass again is going to have really long-term
and the irony of we constantly get hit over the head by broken promises and pledges.
Yeah.
And Labour just can go into an election pledging something, and weeks later, we can say at least we were junior partners in a coalition and we didn't win the election, blah, blah, blah. They've got a massive majority.
They have got all the power in the world.
They've got all the power in the world. It's not a case of saying, we had to, in order to get an uplift in the, tax thresholds, we've had to give on this. Labour in charge totally.
Yeah.
Right. So these are their choices that they've made. Somebody's decided, and one of our Sheffield MPs got up and welcomed the King's speech. We're like, wow.
Yeah.
Do you understand what's in there?
Yeah, and I don't think they do. I don't think they do. And it's a weird because obviously Parliament only sitting for a week or two before then going into its recess has made it a very strange point for Labour. And and it'll be interesting what comes back in the autumn. But also in the autumn, as I'll segue straight to it, is of course, as you said, the sideshow, and it really is a bit of a sideshow. Is the Tory leadership contest? I will say, I just generally take that nobody quite cares about the Tories right now. They are doing their own little thing. But we have got 6 contenders after Suella Braverman dropped out. Or she said she dropped out even though she had the votes. I don't think anyone believes that at all.
You don't drop out, John, if you've got the votes.
That was a bit like I dumped him, he didn't dump me kind of language going on there. But we have Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Priti Patel, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride as the 6 that have come forward. Now, there are obviously lots of people are put into blocks of, okay, who are the more One Nation moderate Tories as opposed to the right-wing Tories? But, what the Tories will now do is the MPs will whittle it down to 2, of which if 2 still remain, because actually we did have it previously where Andrea Leadsom was one of the 2, dropped out, and then Theresa May kind of got anointed as leader. I'm probably sure that it will eventually go to the membership. But I suppose from out of those, Shaffaq, we talk about, obviously, what side of the party they may represent. But let's talk about it from a Lib Dem point of view. Out of those 6, which ones would you think might cause the most trouble for Lib Dems because they would be successful?
I think Tugendhat might be one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know much about Mel Stride, so I can't really say anything about him.
No.
I know Jenrick's pretty right wing, and I think Badenoch's quite polarizing. Yeah. And Priti Patel, we know a lot about Priti Patel and her politics.
I worry Priti Patel might be one of the 2, though. That's the
that's the issue.
I think, but for me, actually, the one you haven't mentioned, I think James Cleverly might.
Yeah, Cleverly might be the
one. Yeah, he's a bit more centrist. He is a decent media operator. Now, what we have to remember is if it goes to the Tory membership, these are the people that chose Liz Truss. And I have a very strong view that they will double down on that same mistake, that there'll be lots of Tory members who think we lost this election, not because we were incompetent and we completely destroyed ourselves economically, but actually they'll go into it saying, we need to be more right-wing, we need to be more conservative. And so go on.
So a little bit says to me that the MP's got a big role to play here.
Yeah.
They could game this selection. They could easily go, right, I want to stop X, Y, and Z. So, for example, going back to Priti Patel, for example, I don't want Priti Patel to be on that final 2 because she'll get the votes in the membership.
She will.
So tell you what, I'll go for Cleverly and Tugendhat. So at least they could do that. They could end up making sure that they fix the 2 that go forward.
Yeah.
And they're on a crossroads of Conservatives.
They are.
By the way, there's no Conservatives left in Sheffield.
No, right.
No councillors, no MPs, nothing. They've not had an MP in Sheffield since 1992. So that was the last time they ever elected an MP. And Hallam's not had a Conservative councillor since 2008. And the last one in Penistone Stocksbridge lost. Well, he didn't even stand this year. Forget saying he's lost. He didn't even stand it. I think he saw the writing on the wall. So there are no Conservatives here to beat in South Yorkshire. It's in Sheffield, sorry. So we're just looking on thinking, well, it doesn't really matter who they choose. It's not really going to have much of a bearing here.
But if you're a Tory party member, though, because we've talked about the next year's elections in which are the counties. The counties have been brilliant for the Tories the last 2 cycles. So because I've been I was the first elected to the county in 2017, which was when Theresa May was riding high in the polls before it all crashed and burned. And then 2021, when Boris had the COVID bounce, and it was a brilliant year for the Tories as well. So they have a lot of councillors to lose next year, and I do wonder if that's going to focus minds. And there's all sorts of stuff about what's happened to the Tory membership. So there's a big idea at the moment that a lot of the right wingers who were part of the Tory membership have actually already left and gone to Reform. Now we don't have any concrete date on that because obviously it's private Tory issue. So will that actually change who the membership goes for? So Kemi Badenoch was like kind of thought as the heir apparent, kind of particularly by people like Michael Gove. But actually, she's come across as very prickly on screen. She doesn't look polished. She makes a couple of kind of dud errors. But I do think that is, if she gets into the final two, I think she wins. But it's very interesting. I mean, I really don't know. But I think it's important to realise there's a lot further for the Tories to fall, because obviously they've been walloped in their local government base. If they're walloped again in the counties next year, that is a scary thought for the Tories, because if you lose your activist base, how are they going to bounce back at the next generation?
Well, this is what the issue they had, didn't they? Mobilising their activists in these parliamentary seats. And what was it? Anybody below 8,000 majority was basically told, you've lost already, move on somewhere else.
Yeah.
And for me, look, the way I look at it as well is that they're at a crossroads. Depending on which leader they choose, may create opportunities for us and may be a threat as well.
Yeah.
And we've got to be ready for both.
Yeah.
And for me, next time, I've got a friend of mine who used to work for the Lib Dems, and now he doesn't. And what he said is, if you're not going forward, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
We as a party have got to go forwards.
Yeah.
In terms of both our local government base, so electing more city councillors, county councillors, borough councillors, whatever election you have, and then planning for the next set of general elections of how do you hold the 72 and where do we make the gains?
Yeah.
And conference is coming up, so I can plug conference, by the way. Conference in Brighton is coming up. Yeah. It's going to be really fantastic.
It is.
Please book. You might have just missed the early bird. I think that ended yesterday, but come and join us, because I think the debates inside will be interesting, but actually the interactions away from the main auditorium is going to be really, once for us to get to know some of these new MPs, because all we know is some of them by name and some of them just the photos, but also more important for me, it'd be an opportunity for activists, local party chairs, etc., agents to mix, learn from each other.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of discussions to be had. A lot of, regional parties have got to look at what we've done. Us guys in the north, we've got to look at the opportunities that now exist with Labour being in government.
Yeah.
Where our targeting strategy goes. Going back to what you said earlier, getting our candidates selected. So like I say, you've got county elections coming up. Get your candidates selected now.
Yeah.
By September. I'll be really grumpy with you if you haven't, because it's your intention. Do you want to win?
Yeah.
And I used to say to my council,
win by Christmas is the thing. And it's
win by Christmas, exactly. And it's always been the case, John, that you look at Connect and the guys that have done the door knocking, who've done the campaigning before Christmas, they've won it before Christmas.
Yeah.
And the guys that are going, well, I'll think about it. I'll wake up in February and, I might just get out of bed in March. And then they scratch their heads when some of them have not won. And you think, well, it's there. The blueprint is there. So
and I suppose nothing else. Our final hint, because like I said, we have a lot of campaigners that listen to this. So, I did a post for the ALDC on how we won our three-way marginal in May, which was a really tough fight, but I broke down how I kind of went about approaching that campaign. And one of the things we were able to do is that in my ward, which is a little bit safer, we had the data by Christmas that we were getting 90% of our retention of our vote. So we knew we could slow that campaign down and put extra resources into the more marginal ones. But you can only do that if you have the data and you've done the work over summer and autumn to be able to get that work. And so if you're thinking of your county seat, so there's probably about 12,000 people in a county, electors in a county seat, you want about 5 or ideally 10% sample of that seat is of people you have canvassed again and said, actually, okay, where's our vote going? Our vote's holding up really well. Actually, Labour vote's dropping down a bit, but the Tories are getting a little bit of bounce because they're out of power. You need to assess that, and so then you can make good campaign decisions. So, but we will talk lots more about that as we go on through the year. But do get into conference, because I think conference will be good. I'll be there from the ALDC point of view, so hopefully we'll see. And we do actually have, I can announce we do have a Lib Dem Podcast Fringe, it combined with the ALDC, all about winning your seats in the county elections next year. So that should be really good fun. You can come and see us and come listen to some brilliant speakers doing that as well. But no, that has been a fantastic episode. Thank you so much, Al. Welcome to the Lib Dem Podcast team. It's going to be fantastic. Even though I was a bit worried with you and Hannah that the contingent of Yorkshire people is going to be too high, but we will allow.
You could never have enough Yorkshire people on.
Yeah, all right. There we go. If you'd mentioned God's own country, I was going to beat that just there. But no, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Do subscribe to the podcast. Do follow all our guys on their social media as well, and we will be back with more episodes very soon.